Now we're going to talk about some early naval battles of the war in the Pacific. The first one, May 1942, the Battle of the Coral Sea. This took place off the coast of Australia. Let me get my pointer here. It was not a clear or decisive victory for either side, but it did end Japan's advancement toward Australia. That was an important consequence for the war. Um, This battle was fought entirely by aircraft. This had great significance in that none of the sailors on any of the ships fired on or even saw any of the enemy ships. This was all fought by aircraft. This was the first over the horizon naval battle in history. Aircraft would take off from their carriers, they would fly towards the enemy fleet. Some of them would engage the enemy's fighter aircraft, others would attack the enemy ships, whom their fighters were attempting to defend. They would return to their carriers, rearm, refuel, take off, and do the same thing again. The Battle of Midway. Midway was an isolated island northwest of Pearl Harbor, right here. There was some U.S. Marines on the base, and there was an air squadron on the island. U.S. Marines on the island. The importance of Midway was that it was close enough that if the Japanese could occupy it, they could launch air attacks directly on Pearl Harbor from Midway. They would not need aircraft carriers to take their planes close enough to Pearl Harbor. Obviously, the United States could not allow this to happen. And through a combination of gathering good intelligence and luck, the U.S. won the war. Won the battle. This battle was fought also entirely by aircraft. The Japanese airplanes attacked the Marine base and the American planes on the island. There was some ground to air fire from the island. The United States Navy engaged by launching airplanes from the U.S. carriers, and the battle raged by aircraft from then on. A timely bomber attack proved to be a deciding factor. To study the tactics employed by the U.S. and the Japanese Navy in this battle is truly fascinating. That could be a lesson all by itself. I'm going to resist the temptation to go deep into that. But the importance was the U.S. won. The Japanese did not get their base near enough to Pearl Harbor, and the U.S. regained naval superiority in the Pacific. Next, a video that is going to show you the techniques that American aircraft employed to attack enemy ships.
In 1942, the Dauntless dive bomber is a newcomer to the Navy, largely untested in battle. Its big moment is coming soon enough.
This SBD-2 Dauntless is special. It is the only known surviving aircraft from the Battle of Midway, and it has battle scars to prove it. Each one of these metal patches here covers the nearly 200 bullet holes that were put in this airplane when it attacked Japanese carriers on the morning of June 4th, 1942.
Rear gunners face backwards, handling .30 caliber machine guns to fend off enemy attacks. In front, pilots control a plane not known for speed, but for precision. Its 1,000-pound bombs aren't just dropped, they're aimed. It's called dive bombing.
The tactic of dive bombing was very important in naval aviation during World War II, and the SBD Dauntless dive bomber was the prime instrument of that. And the theory was, with a ship maneuvering on the surface, you really couldn't drop a bomb from a high altitude.
From 20,000 feet, a carrier is a speck on the ocean. Hitting it with a free-falling bomb is next to impossible. But in a dive, pilots can adjust their aim on the fly, and release their bombs at 1,500 feet for a better shot. It's a tactic that takes icy nerves and an iron stomach.
Dive bombing was a death-defying ride of terror. It's basically like a game of chicken that a pilot is playing with the ocean itself. You start at about 20,000 feet, which is about 4 miles above the ocean. Huge ship is going to appear about the size of a ladybug on the tip of a shoe. So it's tiny.
They practice over land targets, plunging into a 70-degree dive.
It is a jarring, noisy, chaotic descent.
They are diving at 275 miles an hour toward their target, keeping an eye on their bomb scope. They're watching their altimeter.
And at the last minute, you grip the bomb release lever on the left side of the cockpit, jerk it back, you pull back on the stick, and if you're not careful, you can black out because all the blood will be sucked from your head. You get tunnel vision.
Compared to Dusty's dive bombing, Tom Eversole's torpedo bombing practice is low and slow.
During torpedo drops, it had to fly very low to the water and very slow, just above stalling speed, and therefore made it an easy target for enemy fighter planes.
So torpedo bombers typically go in with fighter cover, even smoke screens, because just one torpedo could sink a ship.